Walk on droba, Naya yet tinto. Iti, brothers, what time? Oh, I'm not to them. Oh,
Ebo, Uncle your promise.
Joyce,
Uncle University of Cape
I say, Uncle Foot.
Atom penny.
Uncle Foot.
Atom penny.
I'll let you on.
Atom penny. Atom penny. Give it to me.
Having a mental illness is not a choice, and it's not a moral failing. Mental illnesses occur at similar rates around the world, in every culture, and in all socio-economic groups. The statistics in Ghana stagger. 1 in 5 young people suffers from a mental illness. That's 20% of our population. Alarming, isn't it? But how do we treat issues about mental health in Ghana? My name is Richard Kwadwo, and on Hotline today, I explore why so many Ghanaians are suffering various mental conditions. A hacksaw blade cuts through a chain that held the legs of over 30 people here at the Jesus Divine Temple Prayer Camp at Nyankumasi Ahinkro in the central region of Ghana. They've been here for years. The church is sited at the heart of a big forest. Most of the patients were chained to a tree by the ankle. They were not supposed to be close to the regular worshippers, so that their point of confinement must be several meters away from the central place of worship. Hospital records show many of them are suffering from schizophrenia, but at this center, each of the inmates is considered possessed by the spirits.
What's the out in one? Papa no come. Walk around Missika or Fama. Oh, hey, my brother, keep mute. How? This how they say I'm crazy. So me, I'm frank and free. I don't have a father. My father has passed away. Murray, please, this is not the first time. Oh. You know, my wife came from Murray. I'm a stranger. I've worked, and my mother is from a building at Murray Johnson, which he has passed away. And my father.
Kwesa Boaje is one of the men who have been in chains for years. He looks unkempt. His trousers and shirts have not been washed for years.
I collected my state pension pay, which is about 200. I spent it on my children and maybe 50 million for a car so that I can keep the home going. The money got lost in the room, so I suspected my wife and children. I was sitting in my sitting room, policeman. I should come.
So police people blocked you?
Yes, from Mori.
Policemen?
How? This how they say I'm crazy. So me, I'm frank and free. I don't have a father. My father has passed away.
Kwesa Boaje narrates how he ended up being tied to the tree. On a recent visit by the chief psychiatrist, some of the people tied to the trees glared, while others slept or muttered to themselves. A few wobbled and made wild gestures, their cries piercing the still air. It was like a bird out of a fowler's snare when the team arrived to remove the shackles from his legs.
Now, there were nights I could not sleep. I would shiver throughout. And my mom was by me, you know, and she goes to church. There will be a part of her that believes it's spiritual. So she will try to solve the problem. And there was men of God that came to our aid that offered these things. You know, let her drink this, something in a Baltic bottle with so many things inside. I don't know if it's you get to a point, you've studied biology, at least you should know the components of what you are taking inside, and you do not know. I was crazy at that time, but once in a while I come to my consciousness and I said, I shouldn't be drinking this. It smells nasty, it tastes nasty, and I'm supposed to take them.
25-year-old Abena Korkor just completed her first degree at the University of Cape Coast. She is a lady of average height. Abena would have found herself at one of the prayer camps just like Kwesi Abuaje and the others.
February 2015, I was running for SRC presidency at the University of Cape Coast. I really, really wanted to be the first female SRC president. We have the same opportunities, we have equal opportunities. So I do not know why in the history of tertiary education in Ghana, we don't have any female presidents. I took it upon myself to be the first to take that initiative. Unfortunately or fortunately, I had a mental condition that prevented me from going all the way to end the elections or to run for the elections. After a series of events, posting of nude videos, going into wild, manic episodes, I was finally diagnosed at the Accra Psychiatric Hospital of bipolar disorder.
Something dramatic changed when she was a student. Abena Korkor wanted to become the first female SRC president of UCC. Her aim was to be a student leader at the University of Cape Coast. She became famous, but the fame was short-lived.
I traveled to Accra without any money on me. You wonder what was really going on. And I got to Accra, Kaneshi to be precise. Then the driver says, my money. And I said, I don't have any money. Let's take the car to my house and I'll pay you. That was my exact answer. Like, who takes a choo-choo from Accra to Tema for you to pay your fare, And luckily, I met a gentleman there who was, right in front of the door. When we opened the door, the gentleman was there. So through the arguments, and because of the way I was dressed, everybody was talking about me. Oh, girl, people were talking. I didn't really mind because I was not in the state to mind, but I can picture everything. So this guy just said, oh, I will offer to pay for her. I was really surprised. So we got into a taxi. He asked me where I live and he's going to take me home. And at that time, people were calling, Abena, why have you posted this? And I was furious. Because I thought I didn't feel there was anything wrong with what I posted.
Every society struggles to care for people with mental illness. In Ghana and parts of West Africa, where psychiatry is virtually unknown, the chain is often used as a last resort for desperate families who cannot control a loved one suffering from psychosis. Religious retreats, known as prayer camps, set up makeshift psychiatric wards, usually with prayer as the only intervention.
We've got to a certain point in time in our development as a nation that we need to begin to see ourselves as human beings. Due apologies to that statement, but that is the reality. In the past, our actions have not indicated that we have given the full status of ourselves as human beings. If we abuse the rights of somebody who is ill mentally, just because he's mentally ill, or when you will not subject that same person to those abuses, when that person has another kind of illness, that becomes gross abuse of the human rights. You are telling that person that he is subhuman. So we've got to a certain point in time in our history of our development that we must begin to give full rights, full recognition to persons with mental illness. Now, one of the most dehumanizing acts of abuses of their rights is to put them in chains as if they are dogs or they are monkeys or something of that nature. That is absolutely dehumanizing, notwithstanding the good intention they might have at the back of their mind, that they want to to constrain them so that they'll be able to give them healing, in inverted commas. That may be a good intention, but the bottom line is it counts out as human rights abuses. And so the Mental Health Act has aimed at stopping these abuses.
Dr. Kwesi is the chief psychiatrist in Ghana. His work is to coordinate all psychiatric institutions in Ghana and ensure that they are run efficiently and effectively. Dr. Osei is disturbed by the increasing number of people that have been chained at prayer camps in Ghana.
Do the Orthodox facilities put people in chains? No, we don't. We don't put anybody in chains in the Orthodox facilities. Are there human rights abuses of some sort in the Orthodox facilities? Yes. And they should also stop. For instance, and I keep saying, if a ward is meant to take 50 people, and you go there at any time and you see about 150 people, that serious congestion is what I call state-sponsored human rights abuse.
But are they happening?
It's happening. That's why I said yes. So if you go to a ward, some of the wards, not all, if you go to Accra Psychiatric Hospital, which has about 20 wards, or 23 wards actually, one of them is serious congestion. That is our forensic ward. That ward is meant to take only about 50 people. If you go there, there are just about 28 beds, and yet there are about 160 patients. That is serious human rights abuse sponsored by the state. So the state also has a role to play in this human rights abuse, and that should stop. And of course, we know Accra Psychiatric Hospital was built as a prison. 1906, over 100 years ago. So that time, there really was no appropriate treatment for the persons with mental illness. So it was just put them in a prison, an asylum. And that unfortunately has remained so. There have been attempts to modify, to reshape the place, to bring it to a quasi-hospital status. We still retain some elements of prison life, and that is one of them. So we need to do a lot of work there. But until then, so what I'm saying is that yes, there's human rights abuse, even in that sense, but of course not in the way of chaining patients.
Section 55 of Ghana's Mental Health Act reads,
"A person with mental disorder is entitled to humane and dignified treatment at any time with respect to personal dignity and privacy. Such persons with mental disorder are entitled to the same standard of care as a person with physical health problems and shall be treated on an equitable basis, including quality of inpatient food, bedding, sanitation, buildings, levels and qualification of staff, medical and related services, and access to essential medicines. A person with mental disorder shall not be subjected to torture, cruelty, forced labor, and any other inhumane treatment."
Historically, mental illness has lingered near the bottom of both African and global health priorities, well behind deadly threats like malaria, measles, and HIV. But the United Nations adopted global development goals that, for the first time, include a commitment to promote mental health and well-being and to reduce premature deaths from non-communicable diseases, including mental disorders, by 1/3 by 2030. The World Health Organization has also intensified its focus on mental health, calling for an end to the chaining of people with mental illnesses. According to the WHO, most countries in Africa, if they have a dedicated budget for mental health care at all, devote an average of less than 1% of their health spending to the problem, compared with 6 to 12% in the wealthy countries of the West. At the last count, Liberia had just one practicing psychiatrist. Niger had 3, Togo 4, and Benin 7. Sierra Leone had none.
Please, you pick it up. Government should come in. If we decide that we can't continue to stop this will be a big shame to all of us. This cannot continue in the 21st century for Ghana. With all our either acclaimed or self-acclaimed, whatever big name we give to ourselves. Last year, for instance, the government did not give us a PESWA, the psychiatric hospitals. So if you had done that last year, where would they get the money? This year, you had some little releases. So financial constraints is a big challenge, and I'm hoping that we will not be driven to a point where we'll say we'll stop it. But we are bound by the law to do it. We are all affected or afflicted in one way or the other. If I don't have, indeed, I doubt whether anybody in this country can tell me that he has not had a personal encounter with mental illness. Either he himself has had it, and remember, we say for every 5 people, somebody has it. So either he himself has had it, or a relation of his has had it, or a friend has had it, or the friend's relation has had it. At worst, you are living in a society where somebody has it, and when you are going to work, you are panicking. Whether this person is not going to injure me, harm me. That is your complaint of it. So we are all affected in one way or the other.
For now in Africa, it is the families of people with mental illnesses who bear the overwhelming cost of care. And the greatest burden usually falls on mothers, sisters, and daughters.
We know that we have most of the cases, most of the conditions patients or clients present, and they are basically things that are overwhelming them. There are troubles that are going on or mistakes they have made, and they've not come out from such mistakes. They're guilty, conscience, a lot of things. And until it manifests as physical symptoms, until it manifests as I don't feel well, my back is aching, my here, my there, then we pay attention to it. So there's been over 1,000 cases. You go to the normal hospitals, some of the doctors do well when they think this one is a social factor or a social problem, they refer. Then you come to the psychologist and people get well. Especially when you have your faith deeply rooted in, say, a God, that everything that happens in your life stems from there. So every solution you have to go there. But there are some things we will say is basic wisdom. Because these faith-based people are capitalizing on our perception of them. We think they have all the solutions.
Statistics on the number of Ghanaians with mental illnesses bound by chains are not available, partly because the shackled are often hidden by family members, traditional healers, and at prayer camps. Most of them are silenced to death.
I know of a recent story of a reverend father who has recently had a course in these mental health issues, guidance and counseling. And I think some few days after he finished, he completed the course, a church member called him. Like, Pastor, Father, I have this, I can't sleep. I was attacked by a witch. When I sleep, I hear somebody, he says what? I feel someone sleeping with me, those kind of things. On a normal day, the pastor will say, come over, we bind that, we break spiritual marriage. I don't dispute that. But then this time, the father went ahead and delved further into whatever is happening around the lady. Fortunately, the lady lives in a compound house with a tenant who always brings in ladies. And while they are asleep, I think they'll be doing their own thing. So per the noise she hears, she takes them into sleep. And that is what is leading to these dreams and those kind of things. When the father started talking to the lady about possible issues that could be not necessarily witchcraft or spiritual marriage, the lady was surprised. Hey, father, in the local dialect, there's a wasasa. You know, because on a normal day, the person says, come over, let's pray, let's bind spiritual marriages. Yes, they may be there. We don't, like I said, we don't dispute that fact. But there could be other reasons, like this lady's own. It is what she was hearing in her subconscious that was transferring into her unconscious.
Human Rights Watch, a non-governmental organization, has been visiting prayer camps located in remote and rural communities. Nearly all the residents were chained by their ankles to trees in open compounds where they slept, urinated, and defecated. None of the camps employed a qualified medical or psychiatric practitioner. Chaining people against their will violates the United Nations Disability Rights Convention, which most West African countries, including Ghana, have ratified. But religious feeling is strong in this part of the world, and the pastors who run the camps preach that through them, God can heal almost any ailment, especially ones thought to be essentially spiritual, like psychosis.
Our belief system, we are all Africans, and our belief system tells us that anytime somebody is suffering from an ailment that we don't understand, probably some spirit or some bad person is causing it. So for most people, the first point of call will be a prayer camp. And in a prayer camp, because they can't restrain people using other means, the chain is the only way they have to use to restrain people. But I must say that the new law frowns upon it. Nobody in Ghana now has the right to chain anybody against his will. Yes, we have been working together in the past, in the sense that formerly we used to even visit patients at the prayer camps. There are prayer camps where they don't allow them to take medications, to take oral medications or medicines, but some allow it. So those who allow it, we go there to give medications on regular basis. So that is a collaboration we have. Apart from going there, making our services available to them from time to time. I have personally done that. I've done that several occasions to Fantini and Kumasi, to Edunfa. We go there to render services to the patients there.
Dr. Kwao Ama Alu is the former medical director of the Ankafo Psychiatric Hospital. Dr. Alu preaches the concept of a marriage between the faith-based healers and the psychiatric institutions. He believes the go-to place for mental health conditions is a psychiatric hospital.
Once somebody has a mental illness, society more or less shuns the person's company, because they have to believe that once you are mentally ill, you will always be mentally ill, which is very wrong. Mentally ill people have been stabilized and they are going about their work normally, whether it's teaching, whether it's nursing, whatever job, people can be stabilized and they can go back to their work. Apart from the stigmatization, we face the challenge of people not being brought early to us. The other thing that we also face as a result of the stigmatization is that people come and literally dump patients in the hospitals and never want to take them back into the society.
There are consequences and punishment for chaining people, according to our laws and the United Nations Convention. Section 8 of the Mental Health Act clearly stipulates
anybody who deliberately neglects a person with mental disorder or subjects a person with mental disorder to discrimination under Section 54 of breaches or rights of the person commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of not more than 500 penalty units or to a term of imprisonment of not more than 2 years or to both the fine and imprisonment.
For Abena Korkor, society makes people become mental health patients. The Ghanaian society goes extremely hard on people that go into trouble.
There was a point I really felt ostracized, stigmatized. People feel you don't belong in their circle anymore. And when you don't have a strong personality, when you don't have maybe a firm foundation and like believing in yourself, you can just fall wayward and be rebellious and continue in the same light, even when you are conscious or you're normal. Don't be too quick to judge, because everybody is doing something wrong. There is no saints. Everybody is doing something wrong. You might say, oh, somebody is a prostitute, but you're a drunkard. You say somebody is a womanizer, but you're a married woman, you don't cook for your husband, you always insult him. It's just that yours happens in a little corner and others, their own comes out maybe on social media. They should be a little bit more lenient when it comes to some of these things. And some people too are just ignorant. They never really want to learn why would this person do this.
Kobe Blay is a health analyst and a psychiatric health practitioner. He says Ghanaians have treated mental health situations poorly and have done very little to offer psychiatric support for victims.
So in our communities, when people go off their behaviors, when they change in the way they do, we change. And that is the negative part of it. We begin to shun them, we begin to lose association with them, we begin to laugh at them, we begin to call them names. In this regard, sometimes people are on the edge of falling. So there's this situation where we begin to call them names and dissociate from them and take them off their roles at workplaces, really push them off the cliff. So our behaviors, just like how we respond to anything good, the way we respond to the case of mental illness as in what we consider as bad, because we don't think mental illness is health that people must seek help for. And so we give them that association which rather worsens their situation. You see, we are people who suffer mental illness have been predisposed to some extent. So in their predisposition, they continue to battle life's challenges just like everyone.
Mental health disorder destroys life. It destroys families, it destroys communities, and it destroys a nation. Having a mental disorder should not be any different than experiencing a physical illness. And it doesn't have to be. You can help make a difference. Richard Kwejenyakon for Joy News' Hotline.